Hello there. It brings me zero pleasure to inform you that shocking new figures show that 1 in every 100 people living in the UK is an illegal immigrant. Further, Britain now has more illegal immigrants than any other European nation, and the true figure could be many multiples higher than that. We are in deep trouble. This will be sending shockwaves throughout the UK, because according to a recent study, there are up to 745,000 illegal migrants living in the UK, and that is about 1% or 1 in every 100 of our population. The research, led by experts from Oxford University, the Measuring Irregular Migration or MIREM project, estimates that the number of those living here illegally is more than double the 300,000 in France and nearly 50,000 more than the 700,000 upper estimate for Germany. And the UK should, in theory, be the hardest country to get into due to being surrounded by sea, except for where the Republic of Ireland is concerned, of course. And more illegals are arriving every day. 973 on Saturday, via rubber boats alone. They still arrive by ferry and air as well, with successive governments doing all they can to make sure they stay here, with the establishment branding anyone who questions or, heaven forfend, even disagrees with their open-door policies as bigoted and far-right. But it gets worse. I read in the press that according to estimates from the available data, there are between 2.6 and 3.2 million illegal immigrants in Europe. So with up to 745,000 of them living in the UK, that means we are accommodating something like 23 to 29% of all European illegals. What a soft touch we are. Further, according to the first data of its kind, well, data made available to the public anyway, it transpires that foreign nationals are almost twice as likely to be arrested in the UK than Brits are. Data that had to be collected from various sources and then collated by the Telegraph to squeeze the facts out. Facts that should be made public by an establishment which is tasked with protecting us. Makes you wonder what else they're hiding, doesn't it? And that comes on the back of a study from the Centre for Migration Control, where GB News reported in September that migrants are 34% more likely to be arrested in connection with crimes than UK nationals. And doubtless the usual woke suspects will be claiming it just shows how institutionally racist the police are if they go about arresting more non-Brits than Brits. You know, the same police that zealously chase the far right. But thankfully, fewer and fewer people are bothering to listen to these weak, wet, woke types. But what irks me is all the Tory leadership hopefuls now jumping up and down about this, having failed for the most part to move the needle anywhere nearer to sanity on this issue throughout their time in the party of government for the previous 14 years. And now we have our former Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying the UK needs to have a referendum on whether or not we stay in the European Convention on Human Rights. But he knew while in office, just like the rest of us, that to regain real control of our country, we had to rid ourselves of two main roadblocks: the ECHR and Tony Blair's disastrous Human Rights Act. But he did not pursue them with any real enthusiasm, did he? That Human Rights Act has not prevented a huge uptick in crimes, has it? The only thing the ECHR has protected are criminals who shouldn't be in the country in the first place. Because it's the illegals who appear to be the ones that attract the help of those who collect donations from rich woke donors to provide the more than willing to help human rights defence lawyers. But the EU is saying that if we leave the ECHR, there will be no illegal immigrant deal, telling me they'll do their level best to keep sending them across to us. And the ECHR hasn't prevented our establishment from cracking down on those it deems as far right, has it? As a prime example, the Manchester Airport 3. We have the police and courts acting in a supercharged form to get anyone into jail who dissents from open borders policies, you know, the far right. But then proceeds at a magnitude slower than glacial, where those that allegedly attacked police officers in Manchester Airport, including breaking the nose of one of them, are concerned. With every sane person in the UK asking, what is the Crown Prosecution Service waiting for? A writ from God? At least Nigel Farage and his Reform UK team of MPs have come out fighting on this one. They're going to give the CPS a few days to get their act together on a prosecution or commence private prosecution proceedings themselves, funded through crowdfunding. Something I gather that is allowed under Section 6 of the Prosecution of Offences Act 1985. Is that where we're going as a nation? Concerned citizens having to fund their own prosecutions because the state doesn't want the CPS to be seen as racist. Reform UK MPs have sent a letter to the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper saying, "This delay and lack of support for serving officers is deeply damaging to the morale of all police officers, as well as impacting on their ability to do their job properly." Of course it is. Who would try and defend the public if the first thing that happens is that you are the first person to be thrown under the multi-culti bus? Further, the 5 Reform UK MPs allege that a senior person within the Greater Manchester Police made a deliberate decision to ensure the fuller footage from the airport incident was not released. Talk about pandering to a preferred demographic, all to prevent accusations of police racism, seemingly by the top brass accepting the collateral damage of ruining police officers' careers in the process. After all, if they pull this off, it's only the lowly grunt cops that get affected, not the top brass seat polishers. This delay comes after a Taliban-style hunting down and sentencing of the far right. Now, as I understand it, the defence can apply to have the private prosecution pulled, or the CPS could take it over, and then drop it. And ultimately, if the CPS is not bringing the case, then it is unlikely for a court to allow it. We really are on the road to ruin, aren't we? Then add in the incident of that Labour councillor Ricky Jones, you know, the alleged cutthroat gesture, and all those in the crowd that stood there and allegedly applauded him. What's happened there? Well, he wasn't fast-tracked anywhere, was he? According to the last news snippet I saw on that case, he's up in front of the beak in January next year. And nary a squeak about all the others there. And this can only get worse while our establishment keeps the UK drawbridge firmly in the locked open mode. And then favours all coming in over our own natural and integrated population.